Hello, this is Christoph with Kaiserworks presenting the proposal by Harrell Destinations and Cloth and Flame for the ground lease and redevelopment of the former Masonic Lodge at Sedona Oak Creek Airport. I'm going to be walking us through relatively quickly a few slides, starting with the existing site plan, then moving to the proposed site plan, followed by some renderings that show the architectural changes that are being proposed as part of this proposal. So we have here on the existing site plan, this is the existing road that travels along the south edge of the existing property. This is our vehicular access point. There's a parking area that's existing here. Directly north of that, we have an existing sidewalk that leads to this slightly elevated event stage with these dramatic views of Sedona north of that. This gray form here is the former Masonic Lodge roof slash building. This next slide here is our proposed site plan. So coming in off that same vehicular access point, moving forward or moving north in this space, we have a double loaded parking area that has on the on the east side has a turnaround, somewhat formal vehicular drop-off point. So cars could pull in here, they would stop at this point here, and let whoever is getting out of the vehicle out at this point, and they would enter the former Masonic Lodge building at this location here. This is where currently, if I go back one slide, we have this access point on the building, and as you'll see in some of the renderings I'll be showing you, we have sort of the primary architectural change that we're proposing at this point is to make this a larger point of entry, and also a point of entry that allows visibility through the building. Currently, there's very few fenestration, very few apertures in this building. It's a very insular building, and with our architectural changes, I think the primary focus is letting the beautiful landscape that this building sits in come into the space and really inform those interior volumes more than they do today. So again, going back to our proposed site plan, and I think I'll go to the next slide, zoomed in slightly here. So this is the main pedestrian entry point into the building. Traveling through that space, you will encounter a platform on the exterior that leads to stairs going down, or a ramp going down to a deck that wraps the building on the north and the west side of the building. And this deck is between 18 and 24 inches lower than the finished floor of the interior of the building. So standing inside the building, you're looking out and over this deck. We're showing a long sort of cloth and flame event dining table that sits just north of the building, and then we have these four top tables on the west side, and then on this west side of the building we're proposing a large and somewhat formal outdoor lounge space that is bookended by a large hearth or fireplace. So this fireplace is on axis with the ridge line of the existing lodge, and it almost feels like the fireplace that never is pulled out from the building, and it creates this nice interstitial space, and it really does feel like an outdoor living room that gives you these dramatic views while being sort of bookended or having the backdrop of the existing building. Traveling slightly north here, we have steps going down to this path that leads to the event stage, and then here's our ADA ramp that does the same. These are faint lines in these drawings, but you see a network or a web of these secondary paths. These are footpaths that we would propose that accent or accentuate pedestrian travel within the site, that are secondary to these more prescriptive hardscape pathways. So there's a number of things you can experience. For example, this fire pit slash amphitheater with these dramatic framing the dramatic views of the Sedona Valley to the west and to the north is something that you would encounter only by way of stepping off of a hardscape path, finding one of these smaller footpaths through the landscape. So there's a sense of discovery as part of that. Moving back now down to the parking area, this line right here, these lines right here, is a landscape wall. The intent here is to limit headlight glare from traveling deeper into the site, and also just limiting the visual presence of vehicles as you're on the site, and getting the cars to be not part of the experience as much as possible. Again, here on the right side, we have our formal drop-off that gains you access into the building. And I'll be talking about this one architectural move when I get into the renderings. That's our next slide coming up. This event stage, the existing stage is this smaller white rectangle. We're adding stairs on both the east and the west sides of that. And we're also proposing a light, somewhat ephemeral steel structure that would float above this, not a roof, but an open frame. And that open frame would allow you to suspend shade cloth, suspend garden lights, have plants or vines. It gives you a framework to sort of dress that space as needed for the event. And then these are freestanding columns that march away from that. And again, here, garden lights can be strung. These can be used for speakers. These can be used for lighting. But we do see these as very delicate, very light touch. So we're trying to be honorific to some of the architectural aspects, like the event stage. We're treating that a bit as a ruin. We're being respectful of it, and we're being also respectful of the desert context that we're working within. So you'll see in the renderings the way we're impacting that is trying as much as possible to be a light touch. Moving now to the primary entry point. So we're standing at this location here, looking due north in this view. One of the quote-unquote architectural criticisms we have of this is that this building is very insular. There's not many windows looking out, and when you're on the south side of the building, you don't have, there's no anticipation of what you're going to be entering into. Through this building, if it were semi-transparent, you'd be seeing this dramatic view off in the distance. And so with what we are proposing is to modify that existing entry point, make it slightly wider. We're going about 11 feet wider with our proposed entry point, and we're making the entry point a moment of transparency through the building. And so at that point of arrival, you're looking through, and you're being pulled by that view, that distant view. And you're also looking through the building to see the activity within the building, and the activity that's on the north side of the building, which is that expansive deck space that's slightly lower. So here you can see people standing at finished floor, and then people just beyond that, they're at 18 or 24 inches below that finished floor height. Architecturally, what we're proposing, this is a patinaed copper standing seam metal. So this has some of the ruggedness that we find in our desert environment, but it's somewhat refined in its architectural form. It's an orthogonal box. This is warmed by a material treatment of wood that you encounter as you approach and enter, and we're also proposing wood as the door and window frame material, and that again is speaking to the material honesty and the sort of the rugged haptic nature of the environment that we're in. This is our roundabout material. We're picking up on the red brick that's existing as an existing palette on the site, and we like the idea of reincorporating that in this formal drive, this formal drop-off point. A car would pull around, park. Someone would step up onto this. This is most likely an exposed, sort of a micro-exposed aggregate concrete. Again, something with some texture to it. And from that point forward, you're drawn into the building. Surrounding this is a landscape palette that really borrows heavily from what's already on the site. So we're taking sort of the best of what's on the site, and we're simply adding to it. And as I toggle back to that prior view, you can see these trees are existing. We think we just take these existing juniper and we trim them up and simply add plants to their base. Moving now to the interior, and here we're looking to the north. We're also looking to the west slightly in this space. This is probably the best or the most amount of fenestration that this existing building has, but given the views we have, we're trying to take it further in the direction of transparency. So we're north facing, so we have good light. We're not exposing the interior to harsh southern sun exposure by opening up these walls. And as you can see here, we have our glulam truss, or glulam beam that comes down, bears on a column. These masonry walls are infill, and so what we're proposing as I move to this next interior image is to open up as much as possible these panels between the structure, and here you can see how much light that would bring into this space. Another thing we're doing in line with sort of the materially honest palette approach we have to this project is grinding the existing concrete floors to bring the stone to the surface. We're sort of using a diamond hone process that will expose the natural stone that is in the concrete already and bringing that to the surface, and giving that a slightly reflective satin finish sheen, which is going to again bounce light in the space and get mild reflectivity of what's going on outside in the floor. Moving back one slide, we have a ceiling plane which has strong dated commercial vibes, if I can say that. So we have an acoustic tile, we have our air registers, can lights, and what we're proposing is instead to turn the ceiling into a continuous texture of tectum. Tectum is an acoustic soaker, so that's going to help deaden the space acoustically. And what we're not showing here, and we probably should be showing here, are can lights, but we're proposing a 2.5 inch or possibly a 3-inch can light, which is going to be these very small jewels on the ceiling that will help illuminate the space. But primarily, we think we can feed a lot of what's being done with regard to the mechanical up top. So this is basically a soffit that is dropped low, that is bouncing light in the space and absorbing sound, and we would be addressing a lot of the mechanical utility by dropping air in this space with registers that are located above and not visible and not part of that scene as much as they are today. Here again, at the edge of this room, you can see the grade change that we're proposing. So beyond this edge here, we would most likely be stepping down 2 steps, or a few steps down to this lower level where the deck is located on the north side of the building. And again, that wraps around this corner to the west side. And here you can see what you would see, these just dramatic, breathtaking views to the north. In addition to that, we are this is a sort of a loose representation of how you could populate the space. This would change obviously with what events are going on at the space. This next slide and final slide, or final set of images, is the event stage looking to the north. And here is our light touch use of that, again being honorific of this existing piece as a ruin, as something that exists on the site, and working hard to really let our moves be quiet and let the architecture really be about just framing the views that are in this just dramatically beautiful environment. What we're not showing here is something I'd mentioned previously, are the additional columns, and that's something that we think would be a useful addition and would allow you to string lights and to really transform this. Let this be something that changes from event to event and allows each event to really take on its own character by having a light touch sort of open framework that allows a lot of variation. So we look forward to your thoughts on this. Thank you.